Welcome to Wine Soundtrack South Africa. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Morena Kalo, and today I am sitting with the one, the only King of Chenin Blanc, Ken Forrester, from Ken Forrester Vineyards. Welcome, Ken. Can you tell me a bit about yourself? Where did you grow up? Where did life start?
Hi, Morena. I'm probably one of the few South African winemakers who was born in Zambia, born in Chingola, right up on the northern border, a long time ago, and moved down here, finished high school here, and then from high school went through hotel school, had restaurants, and from restaurants with the releasing of Mr. Mandela and the country going into a new political dispensation with an election in 1994, a lot of the country was in chaos in 93 leading up to it, and there was all sorts of stuff going on. A lot of our friends in Johannesburg were leaving town, leaving the country, and I said to my wife Teresa, I said, this is a great opportunity. Let's go and buy the biggest piece of land we can't afford. And we came to Stellenbosch and we bought 50 hectares on the kind of banks of the Helderberg, right underneath the Helderberg, 50 hectares of vineyard planted property. Derelict, broken, built the homestead built in 1694, an incredible history, old trees, not one loo that flushed. The whole place was absolutely derelict, broken. It took us a year of renovations, and then we finally moved in and got to work in the vineyards, got to make some wine, and remarkably, my very first wine wasn't Chenin. I walked through the vineyards and went through all the vineyards that we had here, and it just stood out to me that the best, the juiciest, most delicious fruit we had was Sauvignon Blanc. Mike Dobrovich, who was king of Sauvignon Blanc, Malderbos, I went and prevailed upon him through a very close friendship between him and Martin Meinert, and he kind of grudgingly said, okay, I'll crush it for you, and I'll settle it, but I haven't got tank space. You have to find barrels. And between Kevin Arnold and Hempy's Boerta, I stumped up some second-hand white wine barrels. Can you imagine 28 years ago who had white wine barrels? Who was putting white wine in a barrel? Kevin Arnold. And he, they'd decided to stop what they were doing and had some Chardonnay. I had to buy the Chardonnay to get the barrels. So I became a trader quite quickly. I bought the Chardonnay, sold the Chardonnay, kept the barrels, and then put my Sauvignon Blanc into barrel for fermentation and had a Blanc Fumé. And 280 cases in 1994. And today we produce about 2 million bottles.
That's certainly a lot of growth in effectively a fairly short space of time, if you think about it. Are you still only farming the 50 hectares that you began with?
No. Interesting question. What I did was I started to find pockets of land that I wanted that weren't always for sale. Maybe just a vineyard on somebody else's property. So what I started doing was signing contracts, long-term contracts with growers. And what we set out to do is to farm that property ourselves. We go up there with our team, we prune, we go in for suckering, we go in for maintenance during the year, looking after wheat growth or whatever, looking after the cover crop. We go in for harvesting, and then finally the cycle returns and we go back in for pruning. And so we sign contracts with growers on that basis. We have a number of such contracts, and we have here just 38 hectares of our own vineyard, and I rent another 82 hectares of vineyard. So an awful lot of vineyard.
It certainly has grown quite a lot. Mm-hmm. Tell me, Ken, we know you obviously for Chenin Blanc, but there's so much more to the wines that you make here at Ken Forrester. Can you elaborate a little bit more on your wines and your range?
Marina, my passion obviously is Chenin Blanc, and for red, my passion is undoubtedly Rhone. And Rhone just fits here, this property, this site, this location, like a hand in a glove. Rhone, this climate is defined as a Mediterranean climate. That's exactly what we have in the Rhone, in the southern Rhone. The northern Rhone becomes continental. And so here we have an opportunity for Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, Marsanne, Roussanne, Viognier, all those Rhone varieties that absolutely thrive here. I planted the first Mourvèdre vineyard in Stellenbosch ever in 1996. At that time, nobody had Mourvèdre. There were 64 hectares of Grenache in the country. There was 4 hectares of Grenache in Stellenbosch. The rest of it was mainly Pekingese, Kloof and Swartland. And nobody had planted for years because the KWV had stopped, they'd banned Grenache effectively and stopped supplying nursery material. So the only Grenache that had been planted was just people were making cuttings and planting their own, which was not strictly legal those days. And so it's weird because Grenache was a big part of the South African wine industry back in the 60s. And a lot of those vines were pulled out purely because farmers found a way to earn 60 tons a hectare with loads of chicken manure and water, and Grenache was willing. They would carry 60 tons and deliver the stuff to the co-op at 22 bricks, and the co-op could do nothing with it but make rebate wine and send it off to rebate. So eventually the KWB got the needle and said, that's enough, stop, we won't do Grenache anymore. I started working with Grenache in 1996. I was one of the very first proponents of Rhone blends. Back in 96, if you look around, I think the only place that did a little bit of Grenache 1 or 2 years was Citrus Dole. Pekingese Kloof co-op, basically. And they then stopped doing a Grenache and they put it into their red blend. And so all this wonderful old vine Grenache from Pekingese Kloof and the Swartland was just going into the co-op as red blend. Nobody was making Grenache with it, and I couldn't think of anything sexier than getting really gorgeous, svelte kind of Grenache that was elegant, just red fruit, and we've got it. I mean, we've got it in buckets. And if you look at the Grenache plantings in the last 20 years, they've just gone crazy. So more and more people using Grenache, more and more people switching on to the climate zone that this is Grenache town. This is Grenache territory. It works really well here. And it's a kind of grape too that I think would stand us in good stead if you're talking about climate change and global warming. The kind of grape that's got lots of legs ahead of it in terms of heat. We could thrive on that for a long time to come.
I'm loving the way Grenache is really starting to stand out here in South Africa, and the quality of the Grenaches that we're producing these days it really is extraordinary. Definitely for me, varietal to look out for on the shelves. Okay, so we can find your wine all over the show in South Africa, but where can our listeners potentially find your wine internationally?
We have a fantastic rapport in the Canadian market, from Vancouver across to Alberta, from Alberta to Montreal to Quebec, and then from Quebec all the way across to Ontario. We do a lot of business in those Canadian markets. We then, in the US, we're pretty broad spread in the US, mainly East Coast corridor, so from Boston all the way down to Atlanta. We kind of have that well covered. Some in Chicago, we get some in Texas. We have a Californian representative. That's fun, because they also represent some of the biggest, most delicious brands in the world. And you've got to time your visit to get there when they're doing a Vega Sicilia tasting. And oh, I just happened to be around. Thank you. Yeah. And so there, and then in the UK, we have a very strong presence across the UK, up into Scotland, the Midlands, right down south. My last trip to the UK, I was down in Poole. And right down south in that little sunny spot, we have lots and lots of wine, lots of Chenin lovers there. Germany is a good market for us. Holland, not bad. And then for the rest, we kind of, little smatterings, little things going on, just lighting little fires, trying to get them to go.
So a nice footprint where certainly our listeners can look out for Ken Forrester wines on the shelves. What is your first real memory of wine, where wine kind of left this mark on your memory that you thought, what do we have here?
It was, funny enough, after my matric, or something to do with my final year at school, And Mum, at home we weren't wine drinkers. Mum would drink wine, but she would drink the sort of stuff that came from Gilbey's in a big jar called Carafino. And yeah. And Dad had the firm belief that they don't make all beers equal. Some beers are better than others. But there was no such thing as a bad beer. Okay. And Mum brought home some cups of Fonte. And it must have been, looking back, their very first vintage. Yeah, and she brought this and said, no, this is like a South African champagne, and da-da-da-da. And we opened it with much aplomb, and I was just absolutely intrigued that we were making champagne in South Africa. And that was just the start of a journey for me of what else can we do here? What else happens? Why isn't it champagne? It is sparkling, and that kind of learning curve. And then finally, after years in the hotel industry and restaurant industry, as I say, that kind of midlife crisis in 1993, the tender young age of 35, I brought my wife and family down here, and we finally made wine. And we had lunch one Sunday, and I poured some for my dad. And I noticed his glass was drained quite quickly. I thought, it's fantastic, he likes it. And I got up to top up his glass. He said, son, I'm sure it's very nice, but do you think I could have a beer now?
Oh, my word. Some things never change, right? Some things just never change. And thinking back, I think Kaapse Vonkel, the first one, was made in 1971 because they celebrated 50 years of Cap Classique in 2021.
Very early years. I matriculated in 74, so it would have had to have been in 71 because it'd be 3 years from harvest to release. Yeah.
Interesting stuff. You travel the world, I know. Well, it's very difficult to get hold of you here in South Africa. You're always all over the show. Which is the best foreign wine you've ever drunk?
I think just a standout wine in my mind, I mean, I've drunk some great Burgundies, some unbelievable Bordeaux. I drank a bottle of 1961 Chateau Haut-Brion here with an old friend, a couple coming for dinner. We took them out to a restaurant, and it was fortunately my own restaurant, so we had a corkage negotiation that I could cope with, and opened the bottle of wine. And as I opened that bottle, the perfume in the alcove where the four of us were sitting was just so intense. I just said to them, we don't want food for a while, just leave us, we'll sit with us. And we sat and drank that 61 Haut-Brion. The shipper was Echenard. I took the label off the bottle and the foil off the neck and the cork, and I framed that, and that's still in my study today. And that was just, for me, an absolute epic moment in wine. Epic moment.
I can imagine. Wow, that is something special. Sure. Of all the nations in the world, which one do you think drinks the best in terms of quality?
Hey. Now, that's a toughie. That's a tough question. Which nation drinks best in terms of quality? Oh, that's a lovely... I think the Italians, because their mindset, they are such foodies and all about their best food, their best produce, they keep for themselves. Their best wines, they keep for themselves. There's no doubt about that. So I think the Italians might just steal it from the French. And the American wine lovers, I have to tell you, I've seen few private individuals anywhere in the world who can boast wine cellars and wine caves at home like Americans. They have proper wine cellars installed in their homes with 4,000 or 5,000 bottles, various formats. I don't know anywhere else in the world where that happens quite to that extent. So it's an interesting question.
It's on my bucket list. I've said to my husband, the next time we move, or if we do any renovations to our current home, I want a cellar, just a little one. Doesn't have to be thousands, just a little something. That'll make me very, very happy. Okay. What is the most expensive bottle in the Ken Forrester range?
It's a little wine called The Dirty Little Secret. And it was a kind of a project born of some frustration, but also just the need to kind of provide clarity in a dark room. There were a whole lot of natural wines floating about, many of them quite cloudy, and quite dirty. And I would be chatting to the winemaker saying, hey man, why is your wine so cloudy? And I'm getting this like hipster, hey, it's natural, kind of cool vibe going on. So, but why is it cloudy? Oh, well, it's not filtered. I said, no, but why is it cloudy? I've got unfiltered wines that aren't cloudy. If you're just a little careful, you keep the lees in the bottom, you don't keep stirring the lees up into the vessel, you get clear wine. So I thought I should actually try and make some wine, make this kind of whole natural vibe, go and check it out. So I decided to make a dirty one. And I thought, reputation to uphold here. I can't tell too many people about it. So it was a bit of a secret. And so it was ultimately the dirty little secret. And it's based on a vineyard planted in 1959 up in Pickeneeskloof, 640 meters above sea level, about 15 k's from the west coast looking down on Elandsbein. It's a shelf that miraculously, somehow, the soil is beach sand. It's the sandy soil at 600 meters. How on earth that works in geology, someone has to explain. I can't figure it out. And so we've planted, or we didn't plant, the Vineyards was planted in 59. It's bush vines, no irrigation. It benefits from the huge diurnal temperature shift of about 18, 19, 20 degrees a day between midday and midnight temperature shift. It has dew most mornings and fog from the ocean from time to time. And it's just the most exceptional vineyard. But I wanted to take it a step further and not produce a vintage from that vineyard. I wanted to kind of borrow from the modern camera technology where you can shoot 20 frames in a second and then stitch that together as one picture. And I wanted to stitch together 4 or 5 vintages as one picture, keeping the wine in neutral oak for 4 years, 5 years if need be, and then blending it with the younger vintage. Almost what happens in non-vintage champagne, where you keep carrying the reserve and you keep bringing the new wine in with the reserve and you just maintain a house style, if you like. What I wanted to develop and show was a picture of this vineyard's potential in each release. So currently we're on number 3, the third release from our selection, and we're about to go to number 4, which once again will be 5 different vintages blended together. No vintage statement on the bottle, just number 4. And it's an incredibly concentrated, focused wine. We release about 2,200, 2,400 bottles of each release. So here we are 6 years later with 3 releases, and we released 6,000 bottles in 6 years, 1,000 bottles a year.
Well, I can make all our listeners very jealous right now, because as we are sitting here, and fortunately Ken is a very talkative person, I have been sipping away at some of the dirty little secret number 3, and it's being poured, just being topped up as we're going, and I must say it really is an exceptional wine. It's incredibly enjoyable and certainly a real treat, so thanks for that. Which of your wines from your cellar gives you most satisfaction? I know it's difficult, you don't want to choose between your children, but the one that's just, just makes you happy every time you open a bottle.
We do a range of wine. I think it's vital for wine lovers like myself who want to drink a lovely bottle of wine every day, at least. And you don't want to have to pay the earth for that wine. You also don't want to have to interrogate the wine, or worse, have the wine interrogate you. You just want to drink a nice glass of wine. You get home from work, you want to open the fridge and say, what have we got? Boop, boop, pour that into the glass and go, nice. And when that happens, that nice to me that's the 100-point nice. So we make a range of wines called Petit, our little wines, and they are absolutely designed to be my 100-point wines. These are kind of crack it, open it, pour it, and nice and reliable, consistent. We farm all of that fruit, which is quite remarkable. There's no visit to the tank farm to have a beauty competition amongst the tanks to find the pretty tank this year and then to find another pretty tank next year. You don't know who the farmers were, where that fruit came from. You can't replicate one year to the next. You're just picking the lucky tank. And for me, it was essential to farm that fruit right from the ground up that we harvest. And we harvest by hand. Harvesting by hand, a wonderful little sequence of numbers. We this year harvested about 1,400 tons. A bunch average, we think, is about 120 grams, which would give us about 120 times 8, give us about 85 bunches in a kilo. In a kilo, in 1,000 grams. And then there are 1,000 kilos in a ton, and 1,400 tons is 11.2 million, 11,200,000 bunches of grapes, harvested by hand, cut by somebody with a pair of secateurs. And those somebodies all get paid for that we're employing all those people. It's an extra 40 to 50 people throughout the 3 months of harvest, and they stay on and they help us with the vineyard maintenance. And between the farms around us, we have a group of people who we use 10 or 11 months a year, and that additional labor makes such a difference to the community. It's so important, so vitally important.
You're absolutely right. I think labor in this country, where we have such a high rate of unemployment, is crucial. And our industry, just on its own, employs about 270,000 people. And there are so many producers like yourself who believe in manual kind of picking. Even though they could do machine harvesting, they choose to give back to the community to ensure that people have work. Often these people have lived and worked on the farms for generations. They don't have any other reference, and this is what they know, this is what they feel passionate about, this is their life, their livelihood. And it's wonderful that this is happening. But to come back to your petty range, I must say that as a range, for me, in terms of value for money, it absolutely over-delivers every time. It really is a little gem of a line, so really something awesome. Now this question could have an interesting answer. I think I know what the answer is going to be, but I'd like to see what pours out here. Do you think there is such a thing as the perfect variety?
It's such a tricky question. That is a tricky question. Is there a perfect variety? I think that depends on your location. It depends on your site. I think there are perfect varieties for certain sites. So yes, if your terroir, I think it's all about terroir. The variety has to suit terroir. So what are the possibilities of varieties? What happens to them? We know something like Pinot Noir is almost a head case. I mean, you move Pinot Noir 50 meters in Burgundy and it produces a different style. You move Pinot Noir out of Burgundy, you got your whole hands full of all kinds of trouble. So Pinot Noir is an incredible variety that, for me, really does show terroir. Chenin Blanc does that similarly, where we work with Chenin Blanc from Pickeningskloof, from the Swartland, from Paardeberg, from Elgin, from Stellenbosch right here, and every site where we have Chenin Blanc, it looks completely different. It shows, if you write music for piano and you want to play that music on trumpet, you have to transpose the music to the scale of the trumpet. And Chenin Blanc transposes its production in every site that it lives in. And it really is that pernickety. And if you look at Chenin Blanc in the Loire, it's, I think, quite simple to tell a Sauvignon apart from a Côte de Léon or another style in the Loire, that you most certainly see Chenin Blanc in different sites behaving differently, transposing that music into a different key.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. It makes perfect sense what you're doing with the grapes, where they're grown, and very good. Okay, what is your opinion on wine critics, wine competitions, scores, that kind of thing?
Ooh, that's a hoary old chestnut. Yeah, there's that. I've heard somebody mention BLK. I said, "What do you mean BLK?" They said, "No, tell them how you feel. Be like Ken." Well,
I'm going to use that from now on.
Be like Ken. Tell them what you feel. I tend to tell people what I feel. I think honesty is the best medicine. And I think certain critics are relevant. And by the same token, I must say I think certain critics are irrelevant. Relevant perhaps only in their own lunchtimes. You take them for what they are. They're all in the business. They're all trying to make a dime. Good luck to the guys. I don't have a real hard feeling about it either way. I mean, there are certain critics that really do wonderful things for the industry rather than for themselves. And there are critics who really want to just be about themselves, not about the industry. Scores or scores or scores, the public chase after scores. The merchants, the wine sellers, the guys who are involved in the business of selling wine, love scores. I mean, you see them putting up their scores of a particular wine. Who scored it? Oh, we haven't heard. It doesn't matter. 96 is good, No. And so, people chase scores. I think the one that we all familiar with is the Platter Guide, and it's 4.5 star, 5-star kind of ratings. And somebody once said to me, the best wines in the Platter Guide are all the 4-star wines. They're consistent, they're good all the time, and you won't be disappointed by having paid too much or having expected too much. That just go, anything with a 4-star is a guaranteed good wine. So, different ways of looking at it, different ways of seeing it. Is it necessary? It's a vital part of the industry. Yes, I think it is. It keeps everybody on their toes. And ultimately, I think producers, you have the choice. You enter your wines in the competitions or you don't. You submit your wines to wine critics or you don't. And you live and die by the sword if you do.
Yeah, that's a very good point. No one's being forced to do anything that they don't want to do, and you need to work out what's best for you and for your brand, for sure. As a consumer, do you have a preference towards red, white, rosé, sparkling? What tickles you?
My dare I call it problem, might be a problem. My problem is my consumption, is that I'm best kind of suited, for the amount of wine that I drink, I'm kind of better preserved on white wine or sparkling. Reds can get heavy and kind of weigh you down by the end of the night. But I do love a glass of Rhone. I do love a Chateauneuf. You could throw me in a pool of Gigondas and I'd try and drink my way out of it. I just love red wines. It's a bit of both.
And then what is your philosophy on wine and food pairing? Do you kind of break the borders? Do you play around, or are you a bit more traditionalist in that sense?
I've done a lot of training with restaurant staff and restaurant crews and sommeliers over the years. And I say to them, guys, certain wines with certain foods, the rules are. And if you want to look like a Fonte, if you want to look like somebody who knows what they're talking about, these are the rules. So white wine with white meat, with fish, with chicken, red wine with red meat, and high acid wines with fatty meat, and you give them the rules. And I say, but, number one, your customer is paying for his meal. He can drink what he likes. If he wants to drink red wine with his chicken, 100%. You could let him know you know the rules, and he'll respect you for that. But if that's what he wants...
Okay, I'm going to have to do that one again. Sorry. Okay. In terms of wine pairing, do you stick to the rules? Do you like to play around? What is your philosophy on pairing food with wine?
Pairing food with wine, I think, really depends on the person and the occasion. I personally would kind of think that I'd find a wine to match the food that I'm cooking, the food that we're preparing. But I don't think the hard and fast rules are essential. There are people that want to drink red wine with their chicken. People come in, they want to drink Cabernet. They love Cabernet. And you say to them, but why don't you try white wine with it? No, I want my Cabernet. That's what they want to drink, That's fine. Let them do that with the greatest pleasure. At the same time, I'm not one for this wine goes perfectly with freshly shelled new peas just fried in butter. I can't do that. It's no. There's stylistically, there are wines which are richer, wines which are fatter, wines which are leaner, have more acidity, and utilizing those factors with your food, you've got a really rich seafood dish with a cream sauce. You want something with enough acid to cut through the cream. So let's go and look at Riesling, perhaps. Let's look at Chenin. There's great wines to have with that sort of dish. You've got a piece of grilled salmon. It's really just richness in the salmon itself. Let's go get a lovely Chardonnay, kind of gently oaked Chardonnay from high altitude Elgin or something. Just delicious matches. But for me, it's about finding a comfortable pairing, not nailing it down to the sprig of parsley that's going to change. No.
Yeah, I would personally put a really acidic Sauvignon Blanc with those buttery peas, but anyway. Now, I know, simply because I've seen you the next day after the night before, that you sometimes might, just a little bit, overindulge. However, what I would like to know from you is whether you have the ultimate hangover cure.
Ain't no such thing. Trust me. No, you've got to be like any other game. You've got to be fit to play. If you want to play hard, you have to be fit, and you just got to keep going, and that's it. There is no cure. I mean, I used to, when we were students, we had a residence right near the nurses' residence, and we used to go around to them and knock on their doors to get a glucose drip, which kind of worked. But it's fairly kind of medical. You can't go walking around with a drip bag. People want to know what you're up to. You know what I mean? So yeah, but a glucose drip works fine. Apart from that, tough it out, start again.
Yeah, I suppose sugar will help with anything in many ways. Okay, so the FMC block is right behind us, and aliens land in their UFO. And they get out and they're parched, they're very thirsty. What would you offer them to drink?
From that FMC?
No, well, anything. They just happen to, that's where the UFOs landed. And
really
they're walking, they're thirsty, they walk into the tasting room demanding with their 3 eyes and 4 fingers.
What do they drink first? I would certainly point them in the direction sparkling wine, because I'm sure it might be a bit of a shock. It's always good to shock people. It gives you an element of control momentarily. Then the game's set again. But yeah, that shock does help you to control things for a moment. So element of shock, some sparkling wine. Once they get over the bubbles and the carbon dioxide, which hopefully doesn't poison them, being aliens, carbon dioxide is quite a toxic gas. We could then go on and offer them something, I should think, fairly straightforward. The Petit Chenin would be not too frightening at all. That would work like a bomb. And then just for impact, I'd have to give them some pinotage just to see how that goes.
Not the Misfits.
The Misfits is a project with Sean, our winemaker, where we make wine. I promise the staff every year they can choose any grape variety in the country, and we'll go and find a ton of it and make some wine. And we just make a little wine down here. They turn it. Everybody gets a chance to press down and to go and look at the ferment and measure the sugar, the diminishing sugar every day. But we don't have anywhere to put this in our range. So it's called the Misfits. So it goes into our Misfits range. And Cinsault, currently Pinot Noir, currently there's a white coming. So we've got some nice stuff, so Claret Blanche. We've got some nice stuff just fiddling around in that Misfits, which we take out to sommeliers and let the sommeliers kind of taste and see what they think about it. And it's geeky stuff, but it's fun.
It is fun. It is really a fun little range of wines. When you were a little boy, what did you aspire to be?
I wanted to have a big truck transport business.
It's not very kind of romantic like little boys normally want to be a policeman or a fireman or a space traveller.
I wanted lots of lorries. I don't know what happened. I missed that. Next time.
Next time, indeed. Yes. Ken, when you're not working, what do you do in your free time?
We travel, believe it or not. My wife and I love traveling. We have a daughter who lives overseas in the United States, so we get over to go and see her. We have a wonderful, quiet little beach house. We get down to the beach and literally just hide away. I love that. I love that ability to just drive into the garage, close the door, and we're alone. And that's amazing. That feeling is special.
There's a lot to be said for that, for sure. Do you do sport or support any sports teams?
Sure, we cycle. We both mountain bike. We cycle, and I support rugby. I'm still pretty active in rugby, in working with legends, working with kids. Currently on a program mentoring the Sharks. So I'm still active in rugby. Major supporter of Saracens in the UK, of Sarries Marseille in France. And so, I'm still pretty involved in rugby and rugby people and rugby circles, and get to go and see the games. And already kind of next year, World Cup France, tickets organised. We're getting there.
I've always pictured you as a bit of a kind of a rocker person, but maybe correct me if I'm wrong. What kind of music are you into? Genre, artists?
First off, jazz. Jazz, love jazz, modern jazz, piano jazz, and then classics have always appealed to me, always loved the classics, and rock, sure, but not kind of AC/DC kind of rock, kind of anything from back before your time, Wishbone Ash, Black Sabbath, those were kind of about as heavy as it got. Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, John Bonham, amazing, really think they're incredible. The Stones, I went to go see the Stones live in Detroit last year. Loved getting out to see like bands live and stuff like that, and just incredible the energy that Mick Jagger has at 77 years old. He does a 2.5 hour set on stage where he does not stop moving for 2.5 hours.
That is truly incredible. That is incredible. I mean, yeah. And Keith Richards, he must be, 120 now?
He's just waiting for his kids to die so he can inherit.
Moving on to film, do you enjoy movies? Are there any movies that are like icon movies in your mind?
If you want me to watch movies, you need to lock me in an airplane.
Okay. So that's a no.
And in an airplane, I'll often listen to music instead of watching movies.
Okay.
Often.
Not your vibe then?
Kind of okay. I mean, yeah.
What would be the best piece of advice you can give anyone?
I don't know. Your best piece of advice is just to keep going. You don't stop. Sometimes you don't necessarily have to have a goal, but you've got to be heading in a direction, and you've got to keep going. Don't give up. And even when it seems impossible, don't give up. You've got to pick yourself up and keep on going. Just that's what it is. It's just, I think, ato fumua, that ability to keep your head up and to keep on powering away. And if you're only gaining an inch a day, well, it's an inch a day. It'll be a foot in 12 days. And that's how it works. You just keep going. If you want to get ahead, you've got to keep driving.
That is lovely advice, I must say. What is your proudest professional achievement?
Oh gosh, what did I do? I haven't done anything terribly kind of.
Pretty mediocre, right?
No. Professionally, I made some wine. I had some fun, grew some grapes, made some wine, had some restaurants. I think serving dinner to the International Wine and Food Society 20 years, nearly 30 years ago, and serving 80 soufflés simultaneously was pretty smart. Nobody thought we could pull that off. I think watching my kids getting married was the proudest time of my life. Mm-hmm. Watching my girls getting married.
Giving them away. Ooh. Now they're someone else's problem.
Away. No. It's a co-ownership agreement here.
Co-ownership, I like that. Finish the sentence. A meal without wine is like...
I'm tempted to say breakfast, but no. A waste of time.
Okay, if you could have dinner with anyone alive or dead, who would that be?
Winston Churchill first.
That's interesting. That'll be interesting. Mm-hmm. What would you serve him? Which wine would you serve him?
Champagne. He's a champagne fanatic, champagne nut. Drank champagne in the bathtub, which my grandmother does, or used to do. But she never aspired to be Churchill. But Churchill loved champagne, without a doubt. I'm sure he'd settle for a good claret. Roast beef wouldn't go wrong. Decent Yorkshire puds. And we'd end up with cigars and whiskey.
Can I come?
Yes.
Do you think we will still be drinking wine in 2,000 years' time?
Given that wine goes back 5,000 years, there's no reason why we're not going to go forward 2,000. I think that's a slam dunk. I'd take a small bet on that.
Okay, so these space aliens that landed in your FMC block, they're taking you home. What 3 wines are you taking with you?
3 wines to take with. Okay, one has to be, all of them large format.
Of course.
5 litre kind of format. Yeah, I'm thinking champagne, a really beautiful bottle of champagne, going on to probably something from 7 years, maybe from Jackie Blot, one of the great French producers, and lastly, I think Chateau Rayas in a large format. If it was the same height and weight as me, that would be perfect.
Do they even make bottles that big?
I think so. Sadly, no. No. Désolé.
Oh, my hat. That would be fun, though.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Drinking your weight in wine or your size in wine.
Yeah. Listen, I've often, for charity auctions and things like that, put up a prize if you can win your weight in wine. And we get people on the scale, which they're not happy about, a lot of people. You got to tell me your weight if you want to win. Greed will get them. Yeah,
Exactly.
Nobody's going to not tell you their weight.
No, for sure. So I'm almost done, but before I finish off, what is a winemaking area anywhere in the world that you still want to explore?
Italy. I've had very little experience in Italy. Would really love to just take a slowly percolate through the Italian countryside for 6 months and just cruise around. Yeah.
That would be fantastic. Yes. Eat, pray, love.
Eat, pray, love, kind of stuff. You know, Italy, they just have style. They ooze it. I don't know, they get born with it. You kind of put it on in the morning when they get up. I don't know. So you've got to love that and admire that. I mean, they're just so simple. Their food, if it's an Italian recipe with more than 4 ingredients, you know it's not an Italian recipe. You know, plain, straightforward, beautiful quality. And then their wines, their wines are just phenomenal. I mean, their best wines are completely amazing. You end up with a 40-year-old Barolo and you're going, how do you make wine like this? And so, I think it's a nice little 6-month sojourn in Italy would be on the cards.
Oh, one can dream. You don't have to dream, I do. Okay, I'm almost done. However, I want to play a little game with you. I will give you 3 varieties, and I'd like you to pair each of them with a song or a music artist that you think is a good fit.
Okay.
So I've been toying with the varieties that I wanted to ask you, and at first I thought I'm not going to go the Chenin way, but I am. So number 1 is Chenin. Number 2 is Grenache. And number 3 is Cabernet Franc.
To be perfectly frank. Okay, so Chenin, what song or what genre of music
Or artist.
Yeah, would you put with Chenin? I think with Chenin would probably want to go classical. I think we'd probably want to go with Italian, Paganini or something kind of violin, picky, very, very intense. For Grenache, Grenache altogether different. Altogether different. You'd almost want a Russian composer, Mussorgsky, somebody that can really put some effort and lightness and show you some kind of weight and elegance simultaneously. Mussorgsky, I think, pictures and exhibitions, something like that, just amazing. And the third one, Cabernet Franc. Cabernet Franc. Now there's an interesting, almost an imposter-like wine. You see Cabernet Franc so often in blends, you never know where it is. And when you meet Cabernet Franc, you're never sure if it's the right one. I'd have to go with maybe Roger Daltrey and The Who.
I like that. Very cool. Some nice suggestions there. Ken, thank you so much for joining me today. Would you like to just remind our listeners your website, what they can expect if they were to visit Ken Forrester Vineyards, and a few parting thoughts?
Sure thing. Marina, thanks for your time. We have a dedicated app called Ken Forrester Wines, surprisingly. So you can download that at the Play Store or the App Store. The app has a monster amount of information, pictures, videos, tasting notes, and then over and above that, we have our website, World Wide Web, kenforresterwines.com, and the website likewise has a huge amount of information, pictures, stockists around the world, and stories of who we are, how we are, and why we are.
That's super. Ken, thank you so much for your time. It was lovely chatting to you, getting to know you, and all of that over a glass of dirty little secret, of course. Thank you so much for this, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack South Africa. For details and updates, visit our website winesoundtrack.com.